You're playing a dangerous game, my friend." As Nova stood there, the echoes of laughter and music faded into the background, replaced by a sharp realization of just how entangled their lives had become. Scene 64, in the line of fire. The grand chandelier sparkled overhead, shards of light dancing across the elegantly draped walls of the gala venue. Yet amidst the opulence, Caden Onyx stood tense, adjusting his cufflinks as he tried to steady his breath. He glanced toward the modestly adorned entrance, where strangers mingled, laughter bubbling above the soft strains of a string quartet. But for Caden, the room felt like a pressure cooker, simmering with secrets that could erupt at any moment. "Do you think it's always this tense?" Nova Leclerc's voice broke through his thoughts, laced with a feigned lightness that only partially masked her concern. She leaned against a marble column, an ivory dress flowing around her like a cloud, yet there was an uncharacteristic stillness to her stance. Caden shifted, his jaw clenched subtly, heart racing, not out of fear, but an awareness that their lives hung in a precarious balance, the past threatening to seep into his present. "Depends on what you're looking for, I suppose," he replied, his gaze flickering to a group of men in dark suits across the room, eyes roving as they murmured with intense seriousness. "Yes, but all this beauty and nothing seems right," she said, a hint of frustration in her tone. Nova's eyes widened slightly, their depths a swirling tempest of emotion. "I mean, look." Before she could finish, a sharp laugh echoed from the far corner, drawing both their attention. A tall man, slick hair gleaming under the chandeliers, clinked glasses with another, the sound slicing through the comfortable hum. Caden narrowed his eyes, sensing the conspiracy behind the laughter as it settled like a chill in the air. "The seamstress must have had a field day," Caden commented, forcing levity into the moment, but unable to shake the edginess that coursed through him. "I bet he models that suit in his sleep." "Are you sure it's the suit and not the man?" Nova smirked, but the humor faded quickly. Her body remained tense, fingers slowly curling around the hem of her dress as if afraid to let go. "Caden," she began, her tone shifting, serious and untethered. "I saw the way you glanced at him. You know something." "I know too much, Nova, and the less you know." He paused, a deep breath darting between his lips, pushing the weight of hidden truths into the ether. Their eyes met, and for a breathless moment the world around them shifted. "Your safety is all that matters." "You can't shield me from everything," she shot back, a flicker of intensity sparking behind her eyes. "You think I'm just going to stand here, wearing illusions while you protect your secrets? We're in this together." The challenge hung between them, potent and charged. Caden stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This isn't just a laugh at a play, Nova. We're in the middle of something dangerous. There are lives on the line." "You're scared," she whispered, her voice barely above the din, yet somehow laden with accusation. "Scared of letting me in. Scared of your past." Caden gritted his teeth, the truth pressing against his rib cage. "Maybe. Or maybe you should be scared of knowing what you'll find." His gaze bore into her, a force of nature and trepidation all at once. Nova held her breath, the air thickening around them, electric with unsaid revelations. "I don't care what you've done. I care about what you're willing to do now." Before he could respond, the sound of a loud crash erupted nearby. Laughter turned to gasps as a heavy glass table toppled, drinks within shattering against the marble floor. The crowd swirled with panic. Caden instinctively moved closer, shielding Nova with an outstretched arm. "Stay close," he urged, his eyes scanning the chaos as hostility flared, a palpable threat weaving through the gala. He sensed shadows stirring in the corners, agents of betrayal lurking among the elegants. "I won't hide," she declared, unflinching despite the turmoil. "Not now, not ever." He turned towards her, his heart raced alongside her resolve, a spark igniting within him. "Then you'll have to fight with me." In that heartbeat, surrounded by tumult, something shifted between them, driven not just by protection, but the desire for shared strength. Together they faced the unknown, two hearts bound by secrets yet drawn toward a common battle. "All right," she nodded, determination illuminating her features as they braced for the conflict ahead. The room, once a mere backdrop to their emotions, had become a stage, a treacherous line of fire where the stakes were no longer just their lives, but the truth that could either tear them apart or bind them forever. Scene 65. Reflections of the Heart. Caden Onyx stood at the edge of the grand balcony, the cool night air brushing against his skin like a whispered secret. Below him, the gala surged with laughter and music, a cacophony of elegance veiling the sinister undercurrents of the criminal syndicate that ran like a pulse through the night. The fragrant blooms of the garden drifted on the breeze, mingling with the crisp scent of distant rain. Yet all Caden could focus on was the roughened scar on his soul, an unrelenting reminder of choices made. He clenched his jaw, his heart pounding against his ribcage, each beat resonating with memories that threatened to tear him apart. A son, the thought hung heavy in his mind. A secret held too long, a child he loved in shadows. How could he reconcile the man he had become with the father he couldn't be? His eyes flickered towards the ballroom, searching for her, the chaos of the evening swarming like bees around their hive, but finding only the delightful rhythm of Nova LeClaire bridging the gaps between conversations. "Hey!" She swept onto the balcony, her dress a cascade of fabric that fluttered like a wisp of smoke behind her. The moonlight caught in her striking curls, painting her face with a silvery glow. "You look like you're about to take flight." Caden turned, allowing a faint smile, unsure if it reached his eyes. "Thinking," he admitted, his voice taut. "About what?" she probed, stepping closer, her warmth radiating like a sunbeam piercing through the night. "Choices," he said, the one word laden with the gravity of their implications. "What does it mean to choose someone fully when there's so much left unsaid?" Nova, ever the embodiment of spirited enthusiasm, tilted her head, her brows knitting in curiosity. "You think I'm here because I'm supposed to be someone else? You think I don't have a choice?" The playful spark in her eyes ignited a flicker of hope within him, momentarily pushing away the shadows of worry. "It's not about that," he replied, voice barely above a whisper. "It's about what we leave behind in our wake." Their gazes locked, and in that charged moment, silence wrapped around them thickly like a warm embrace. Caden stepped forward, the urge to bridge the distance between them overwhelming. The scent of her lavender perfume entwined with the damp earth, and he could nearly taste the floral sweetness lingering on his lips. "Nova," he breathed, his fingers dangerously close to brushing against her arm. Around them, the music seeped through the walls, an echo of promises yet unspoken. "Tell me what you want," she urged softly, her voice a delicate thread woven between their hearts, urging him closer, deeper. "Do you want me to understand your past? To be part of your present?" Caden's heart raced at her words. "You don't know." "I know about secrets," she interrupted, eyes alight with unyielding determination. "I've battled my own. I know what it's like to live beneath the weight of expectations." He took a breath, desperately trying to gather his thoughts while the image of that unseen child lingered in the background like an uninvited guest. "Keeping secrets only digs deeper holes, Nova. I've done it long enough, and it almost drove me mad." "Then stop," she exclaimed, her passion igniting the air around them. "You don't have to be alone in this. Let me in." Caden glanced away, the vulnerability of her offer fracturing the wall he'd built around his heart. He needed to protect her from the truth, a truth that could split lives as easily as a blade through the dark. Yet her presence was intoxicating, a balm to his weary soul. "Why do you think I'm afraid?" he finally said, wanting to drain the tumult of his words of their sharp edges. "I fear losing you before I've even called you mine." A moment stretched between them as the world outside continued its chaotic dance. Nova stepped closer, her front now aligned with his. The warmth of their energy clashed and sparked, igniting a fire neither knew they had. "Then don't let the shadows win. Choose me, Caden. Choose us." He searched her eyes, seeing strength and desire reflected back at him, and suddenly his worlds collided. It didn't matter what fears had dictated his past. In this moment, it was enough to consider the unknown future waiting before them. As the music swelled beneath them, Caden leaned in, the tension of unconfessed feelings heavy like the air before a storm, and closed the space in a heartbeat. Caden's lips brushed against hers, igniting a consuming flame of connection that cascaded through them both, an unguarded truth buried in imperfect choices. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as urgency unraveled between them, intermingling their fates on the edge of resolve. With a touch soft as whispered promises, they came together as one. And in that fleeting moment, surrounded by conundrums and chaos below, Caden made the choice that would change everything. No more shadows, only the light of tomorrow. Scene 66. Celebrating triumph. The air in the luxurious penthouse was thick with an effervescent energy, a heady mix of triumph and anticipation that crackled like static before a storm. Sunlight streamed through the vast floor-to-ceiling windows, setting ablaze the fine crystal glasses and silver platters that adorned the long dining table. The guests, all clad in elegant attire, were gathered around in clusters, laughter spilling from their lips like sparkling champagne. Nova LeClaire raised her glass, its contents glittering in the light as she caught Caden Onyx's eye across the room. "To our unlikely victory," she exclaimed, her voice ringing out with genuine delight. "If only our enemies knew how well we worked together." Caden, standing tall with a striking posture that demanded attention, smiled back at her, his eyes holding the warmth of 1,000 unsaid things. "Together," he echoed, crossing the room with an effortless grace that made heads turn. "What was it you said? A unified front?" "Something like that," Nova said, a teasing lilt to her tone as she gestured towards their friends, each beaming with newfound relief. "I'd say we've earned this celebration with the way we handled Bartholomew and his crew." The thought of the confrontation they survived brought a triumphant flicker to her eyes, emboldening her spirit. Caden's expression softened, a glimmer of vulnerability flashing behind those guarded eyes. "You know, I hadn't realized how much I could depend on someone else until you came into the picture," he admitted, his voice low and earnest, pulling Nova closer to him. "Really? Just me?" she asked, a teasing grin on her face as she leaned in, nearly brushing against him. "Who would have thought the legendary Caden Onyx needed assistance?" "Legendary, huh?" He chuckled lightly, though the moment felt heavier, laden with the unspoken realities of their entwined fates. "Sometimes even legends need someone to catch their fall." His gaze grew serious as he stared into her eyes, as if searching for something buried deep inside her. Nova took a breath, suddenly feeling the weight of her own secrets. "We're more than legends," she said softly, clasping his forearm, sensing the taut muscles beneath the tailored fabric of his shirt. "We're real people in a perilous situation." At that moment, the laughter around them faded into a soft hum. Caden leaned into her, and the world dissolved, leaving only the two of them amid the celebratory chaos. "What if I told you that I sometimes wish we could just be without all this? Without the danger, the intrigue? Or how about without the disguises?" she teased, her tone light but her heart pounding. "That sounds perfect, Caden." "Maybe it's time we drop the facade entirely," he whispered, his voice low and intensely personal. He took a half step closer, his presence enveloping her like a warm embrace, and she marveled at the magnetic pull between them, drawing her ever nearer. With a hesitant breath, she looked up into his eyes, those deep-set orbs reflecting her own swirl of emotions, hope, desire, and something akin to fear. "I think I'd like that," she breathed, the moment stretching out as her heart raced. He didn't respond with words. Instead, he took another step into her personal space, and in an electric moment that seemed to suspend time, he lowered his lips to hers. It was a tentative brush, warm and brimming with uncertainty, yet tinged with an unmistakable yearning. Their lips met, gently at first, but the warmth ignited something deep within them both, turning the kiss fevered, a silent promise shrouded in sweetness. As the kiss deepened, the penthouse and its jubilant noise slipped away from their awareness. Nova's heart soared, crashing against her ribs like the waves against a rocky shore, each feeling more exhilarating than the last. The kiss held a passionate intensity, yet felt delicate, unraveling the tangled threads of their realities, weaving them closer together. And just as she began to melt against him, his hands slid to her waist, holding her tightly, anchoring both of them in the storm that had always threatened to consume them. When they finally broke apart, breathless and blinking, Nova searched Caden's face, feeling a rush of connection and understanding. This is just the beginning," she whispered, her voice steady with resolve. Caden smirked, an undeniable spark lighting up his features. "Then let's make sure we celebrate every triumph, shall we?" With laughter bubbling between them, they turned back to their friends, ready to embrace whatever came next, fortified by the warmth of their shared victories. Scene 67, Fleeting Moments. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains of the living room, casting golden patterns onto the hardwood floor. Nova stood by the window, her fingertips brushing against the cool glass as she watched the world awaken outside. The muted sounds of the city, the distant hum of engines, laughter from the street below, and the rustling of leaves, wrapped around her like a soothing blanket. Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been? Caden's voice broke through her reveries, rich and deep, as he leaned casually against the doorframe. He wore a soft smile, but there was a flicker in his eyes, revealing a depth she had grown to understand. Nova turned to him, a playful gleam in her eye. Different? Like if I had ended up in Paris? Or maybe running a bakery in Provence? Caden chuckled, the sound warm and inviting. I can picture it. You with a beret, yelling at tourists who don't know the first thing about croissants. Hey, I would have educated them, she shot back, pushing herself away from the window and walking toward him, the light at her back illuminating the sweet curve of her cheeks. Caden stood straight now, and in that moment the laughter faded, leaving a charged atmosphere thick with unspoken truths. But really, Nova, he said, his expression shifting, both earnest and vulnerable. What are we doing? With everything that's hanging over us, do you think we can really make a future together? The question hung between them like a taut string, vibrating with possibility. Nova stepped closer, the scent of fresh coffee and the crisp morning air swirling around them, creating an intimate cocoon. I don't know, but I know I want to try, she said, her voice soft but steady. We've both got baggage. More than just baggage, Caden interrupted, his brows knitting together. Yes, and I own mine, but what about you? Nova challenged lightly, though her heart drummed a nervous rhythm in her chest. Caden, you carry so much weight, and I want to understand it. A shadow crossed Caden's face, his eyes darkening like a storm rolling in. I'm not ready to share everything, not yet. The confession felt like an admission of defeat, but Nova also sensed a flicker of hope. He wanted to be better for them, for himself. The sunlight bathed them in gold, yet the room felt charged, the air taut with expectation. Nova took another step forward, closing the gap between them, her heartbeat in sync with the tension in the air. How about we focus on one moment at a time? She let her words linger, watching for signs of his response. Caden studied her for a moment, his gaze searching her face. Then slowly a smile crept back, softening the sharpness of his earlier expression. Okay, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. One moment. Their breaths mingled in the stillness, the world outside fading even more. Nova's fingers reached out, tentatively brushing against Caden's forearm, the warmth of his skin igniting a spark. When she looked up again, his gaze bore into hers, filled with a depth that made her insides flutter. Just one moment, then, Caden murmured, his voice rough with anticipation. In an instant, she was in his arms. Their bodies drew closer as the weight of their uncertainties slipped away, the surrounding chaos of the world softening into an ethereal hum. The kiss began gently, a tender exploration that ignited flames beneath the surface, spiraling into a deeper, more passionate connection. Nova felt his breath seep into her, each inhale mingling with the essence of hope, fear, and uncharted possibilities. Time became irrelevant as they surrendered to each other, the kiss filled with longing, their hearts beating in sync. The warmth enveloped them as they lost themselves in fleeting moments that whispered of dreams yet to be realized, pulling them closer to the edge of everything they desired. Finally, when they pulled apart, breathless and wide-eyed, Caden whispered, "Let's create many more of those, shall we?" And in that vulnerable yet promising moment, Nova knew they were about to step into something far greater than themselves. Scene 68, the final countdown. The clock ticked steadily in the silence of Caden's study, a heavy sound layered with the tension that seemed to thrum in the air like electricity. The large oak desk gleamed under the soft light, strewn with papers that hinted at their complex world, a world of contracts, blueprints, and ominous warnings scribbled in margins. Caden Onyx stood behind it, his fingers tracing the edges of a faded photograph, the image a reminder of both love and loss. "Are you ready for this?" Nova LeClaire's voice sliced through the stillness. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed tightly across her chest, a shield against the storm brewing within her. Caden looked up, meeting her eyes, and for a moment, the weight of their unspoken fears hung between them. "Ready isn't the word I'd use," Caden replied, his voice low and steady, betraying nothing of the chaos within. He set the photograph down, just a sliver of memory, history pressing against the backdrop of the moment. "Then what is it?" Nova pushed off the door, taking a step toward him, her presence infectious, filling the room with warmth. "You're acting like this is just another board meeting." "Maybe it is," he said, attempting a smirk, but the tension around the corners of his mouth betrayed his bravado. "A very serious board meeting." She closed the distance between them. The air shimmered, thick with unacknowledged tension. Caden, her tone shifted, sharp and insistent. "I know things are complicated, but we can't play the part anymore. Not with what's coming." His jaw clenched, and for a moment he looked away toward the window, where the evening sun set the sky ablaze with hues of orange and violet, illuminating the world outside as if in defiance of their internal dark clouds. "You don't know what it's like to carry the burdens I do," he said slowly, but there was a tremor in his voice, a hesitation that reflected the turmoil he kept buried deep. "Try me," she urged, her eyes fierce and unyielding, steadfast against the shadows that danced in his. "I have more than my share of burdens, too. You're not alone in this." "Nova," he whispered, a world of softness veiling his intensity. As he stepped closer, she felt the pulse of their connection, electric and palpable. "What's at stake?" "Is our lives," she interrupted, stepping firmly into his space, their breaths mingling, the air thick with possibility. "We're both in this together, whether you like it or not." Caden's gaze softened, and for a heartbeat, the barriers between them began to dissolve. He reached out, fingers brushing against her arm, skin on skin, igniting a spark that shot through them. "You're right," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "But can we afford to let our emotions overshadow our judgment?" A flicker of hurt crossed Nova's face, quickly masked by determination. "What if I want to let them?" she challenged, the quiver in her voice betraying the resolve she fought to maintain. "What if letting go is exactly what we need?" He studied her, the lines of worry etched across her brow reflecting a shared fear, a joining of two paths that seemed destined to collide in an explosion of fire and consequence. "This could end badly," he murmured, stepping back slightly, but the distance only amplified the gravity of their shared longing. "Or it could end beautifully," she countered, voice steady, filled with a wild hope. "Don't you want to find out?" Caden inhaled sharply, the tumult of his heart clashing against his instincts. The photograph now felt miles away, as if he held their fates in his hands, high-stakes gambling in a game with no clear winner. "Being with you is a risk I can't deny," he admitted, tone low as he slid a thumb across her wrist, the touch branding a seal of promise in that secret moment. "But it could destroy us both." "Maybe it's already too late for that," Nova replied, her breath hitching as an undeniable passion ignited in the space between them. "We've already lost so much." Caden watched, captivated as her vulnerability laid itself bare, such fierce strength now behind her truth. He inched closer, a dance of spirit and hesitation, then closed the distance. "Then let's embrace the chaos," he whispered. With that, he leaned in, the world collapsing into the warmth where their connection ignited, a beautifully fragile moment ahead of the chaos that loomed just outside their door. Together. In that heartbeat, they stood on the precipice of everything they feared and desired, the clocks ticking a distant reminder of their fleeting time. The sound of a door slamming echoed in the distance, a premature harbinger of the storm yet to come. Scene 69, ephemeral peace. The late afternoon sun filtered through the large bay windows of Caden Onyx's loft, illuminating the polished wooden floors and casting an ethereal glow over the room. A soothing breeze rustled the soft curtains, carrying the fresh scent of blooming jasmine from the park below. Nova LeClaire stood in the center of the vast space, lost in her thoughts as she meticulously arranged a bouquet of vibrant orchids and delicate white roses, the petals glistening as if adorned with dew. This mundane task, simple in appearance, pulsed with an underlying tension that made her heart race. Caden entered the room, his tall figure framed by the light pouring in from behind him. His presence filled the space, commanding it without effort. He leaned against the door jamb, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on Nova. She caught his eye, their connection igniting a quiet storm in the air between them. A fleeting smile flickered across Caden's lips, yet the warmth did not fully reach his dark eyes, which held a complex whirl of emotions: pride, yearning, and something else, something deeper that he hadn't yet articulated. "Do you think they'll be ready for this?" Nova asked, gesturing toward the ornate arrangement. Her hands trembled slightly, betraying her calm facade. It was supposed to be a night of elegance, not a revelation. Caden pushed off the doorframe and stepped closer, the tension thickening like the air before a thunderstorm. "They always expect the unexpected, Nova. You know that better than anyone." He closed the distance between them, allowing the fragrance of the flowers to envelop them both, drawing them into a world filled with subtle danger and undeniable chemistry. Their fingers brushed as she adjusted the bouquet, a jolt of electricity surging through her at the contact. Caden's jaw tightened, the muscles rippling beneath the surface. It was a gesture so trivial yet charged with the weight of everything unspoken. His eyes found hers, a lingering moment suspended in time, filled with longing and something that felt acutely like fear. "Are we even ready for what's about to unfold?" Nova whispered, her heart racing with both anticipation and dread. Her voice was soft, yet each word struck like a hammer. The revelation of her twin sister's identity switch still hung over them like a dark shadow. He took a breath, exhaling slowly as he reached for the bouquet, involuntarily becoming the anchor amidst the brewing storm. "You've spent your whole life living for everyone else, Nova. Maybe it's time to focus on what you want, what we want." His voice dropped, low and husky, each syllable skimming her skin. The air was thick with the scent of flowers and unsaid promises. The tension shifted palpably, as if the room itself heaved a sigh. Nova's pulse quickened, the softness of his words igniting a passionate flame in her heart. She looked up, meeting the blazing intensity of his gaze. "And what is it that we want exactly?" she challenged playfully, a teasing lilt in her tone that barely masked the seriousness beneath. Caden stepped closer, inches apart, their breaths mingling in the charged space between them. "For you to be free, for us to be real, together." He hesitated, the weight of his own hidden truths crackling in the air. She felt the pull of his unguarded vulnerability, a stark contrast to the confident man who often deflected intimacy with a disarming smile. "A moment of truth, then," Nova mused, a faint smile curling her lips, drawing him further into her orbit. "Does that mean more than just this?" She gestured to the flowers, still held between them, only to swell with the emotional stakes rising between them. "No," Caden replied, his voice dropping further, rich and deep. "It means everything after. It means letting go of the secrets, of distances we've put up. It means choosing each other." The gravity of his words hung between them, and in that moment, the chaos of the impending evening faded into the background. Without thinking, Nova closed the space, her hands reaching up to cup his face, tracing the lines of his jaw with her fingertips. Caden responded instinctively, stepping closer until they were mere inches apart, his breath warm against her skin. It was a leap, one that carried all the potential for turmoil and revelation, but in this moment, it felt like the only choice they could make. "Then let's choose boldly," she breathed, leaning closer, a tender spark igniting their senses. The kiss that followed was soft yet fierce, sweet yet intoxicating, an ephemeral peace amidst the storm rumored to come. As they melted into each other, the world outside faded away, replaced by the intoxicating perfume of every stolen minute they had yet to embrace. They withdrew just enough to breathe, their foreheads resting against each other, a shared quiet promise lingering in the air. "Whatever happens tonight," Caden murmured, his voice hoarse with emotion, "we face it together." Nova nodded, a smile breaking across her face, the sound of distant laughter from the gala echoing through the open windows. "Together," she agreed, feeling the truth of their bond weave into the impending chaos. In that fragile moment, they fortified their connection, in hopes of weathering what lay ahead. Scene 70. The gathering storm. The sound of clinking glasses and soft laughter echoed through the grand hall of the Minerva, an opulent venue adorned with shimmering chandeliers and rich dark wood paneling. Outside, the sun began its descent, casting long shadows and bathing the evening in a golden glow. Caden Onyx stood at the edge of the gathering, meticulously adjusting his cufflinks. The mundane task felt like a tether to civility in the brewing chaos of his life. As guests milled about, the atmosphere throbbed with unspoken tension, each smile layered with secrets. Nova Leclaire weaved through the crowd, her heart racing beneath the sleek fabric of her emerald gown. For weeks, she had danced around the truth of her identity, torn between yearning for connection and the weight of her sister's hidden life. "Make sure you charm the right people tonight," Caden admonished, his voice a steady reassurance even as his eyes betrayed a lingering worry. He leaned closer, allowing the faint scent of cedar and sandalwood to envelop her. She glanced up, searching his face for the boundaries she had begun to blur. "Charming? I thought I was supposed to be incognito," she replied, the hint of a smile teasing at her lips. A flicker of amusement danced across Caden's features, the kind that stirred something deeper within Nova. "Incognito doesn't mean you can't be captivating." The warmth in his gaze sent butterflies swirling in her stomach. Across the room, laughter erupted, surrounding them like a tempest. A group of elite socialites jostled and debated animatedly, their voices hot with tension over the latest scandal to rock their circles. Tessa and Jalen stood conspicuously amidst them, Tessa's infectious laugh ringing like bells, even as her once playful nature grew darkened by circumstance. "Did you see the way Margot was eyeing that new buyer?" Jalen quipped, raising an eyebrow. "It's practically scandalous." Caden exchanged a knowing glance with Nova, pulling her close as the dynamics of the room shifted. "Let's not be the center of gossip tonight. We have our own secrets," he muttered, a hint of gravity seeping into his tone. A server glided past, offering a tray of sparkling wines, each glass catching the light like stars. But the rising tension gnawed at Caden's composure. He found his fingers brushing against the glinting metal of the cufflink, as if seeking an anchor in the chaos. The energy surged as Nova's hidden truth coursed through her like a live wire. "Caden, she began, her heart pounding louder than the music in the background, but the moment hung delicately, poised on the edge of vulnerability. Then, without warning, a loud crash shattered the careful decorum. A crystal decanter had toppled over, spilling wine across the polished floor. Gasps reverberated through the crowd, murmurs of surprise morphing into a cacophony of warring opinions about the evening's unfolding chaos. "Oh, typical," Nova scoffed, trying to mask her own rising dread with laughter. "A gala isn't complete without a little disaster." But Caden grasped her wrist gently, urgency sharpening his gaze. "We should move," he whispered. "If they're here for something, we don't want to be caught unaware." Their eyes locked, a magnetic pull charge between them. Within that moment, the world faded, only their silent understanding remained. Memories of shared glances, soft laughter, and deep conversations converged to create a singularity of emotion they could no longer ignore. Instinctively, Caden moved closer, the distance melting away until they stood nearly nose to nose. "You have no idea what you mean to me, do you?" he murmured, the weight of his secrets heavy in the air. "I think I'm just starting to," she breathed, vulnerability sparking a connection that felt tangible, electric. And in that charged space, as the clamor around them faded into a monologue of uncertainty and anticipation, Caden lowered his lips to hers. It was a question wrapped in warmth, a promise sealed with softness, a kiss that ignited something long buried within. Their surroundings became a blur of colors and sounds, yet in that heartbeat the world outside felt both vital and irrelevant. A tempest was brewing, but within their embrace, the storm felt like a release, stirring away the weights of their past and the shadows of what lay ahead. As their lips parted, breathless and vulnerable amidst the chaos, Caden whispered with fervent clarity, "Whatever happens next, I'm here." Their worlds were colliding, and as secrets threatened to unravel their lives, they knew one undeniable truth: they would face it together. Scene 71. One last chance. Rain drummed against the grand windows of the sprawling mansion, each drop splattering like the weight of the truth hanging between them. Caden Onyx stood in the dim light of the candlelit room, shadows playing across his sharp features, accentuating the quiet turmoil within. Outside, the storm mirrored his inner chaos, a tempest of anxiety about the secrets he held and the looming confrontation with the syndicate threatening everything he cherished. Across the room, Nova Leclaire paced, her fingers running through the loose strands of her dark curls, mirroring the nervous energy swarming between them. The tension was palpable, electric. She could feel the pull of his presence, magnetic but daunting, as memories of their shared laughter wove through her mind. Yet now every laugh felt tainted, overshadowed by the weight of deception. "Caden, we can't keep doing this," she said, her voice steady despite the churning feelings inside. "We can't dance around the truth anymore." He turned sharply, his piercing gaze finding hers, a flash of vulnerability breaking through his stoic exterior. "You think it's easy for me? Hiding a part of my life? Letting you think you know who I am?" The frustration in his voice was like a violent burst of thunder, but beneath it lay the deep current of fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection. Nova stepped closer, the fragrance of jasmine from her perfume mingling with the scent of rain-soaked earth wafting in through a window left ajar. "I know about your son," she said softly, her heart racing, yet a resolve building in her words. "I know why you've kept him a secret." Caden's breath caught, eyes widening with shock, then narrowing in a mix of anger and fear. "Who told you?" He took a step toward her, the intensity in his gaze igniting a wildfire of emotions within her. "No one," she replied quickly, her heart pounding like the rain against glass. "It was in your eyes, Caden, every time you talked about your past. I saw the shadows, the weight you carry. I understand that you're scared, but you can't shut me out." The rain intensified, the sound becoming a chaotic symphony mirroring the storm brewing in Caden's heart. He clenched his fists, feeling the surge of emotions threatening to spill over. "Do you understand what it means to have a child to protect? To raise them in a world like this?" "I do," Nova replied, her voice steady but filled with compassion. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, feeling the heat radiating off him. "But you're not alone. I'm right here." Their eyes locked, a world of unspoken emotions passing between them. The rain splattered against the window, creating a rhythm like a drum, urging them to confront the truth rather than dance around it. Caden's resolve faltered, his breath coming in shorter gasps as he searched her expression for something, understanding, acceptance, perhaps even love. "And what if I let you in, Nova? What if it all comes crashing down?" The vulnerability in his voice melted the tension, igniting a flicker of hope. "Then let it crash. We'll face it together," she whispered, the words threading into the storm outside and reaching deep into his heart. As the rain drizzled in torrents, breaking against the facade of the mansion, Caden took a step closer. He was painfully aware of every breath, every heartbeat, the way their worlds had collided, how secrets twisted between their souls like vines. "It means everything to me that you're willing to take that risk. I've never been good at trusting," he admitted, his voice now barely above a whisper. With trembling hands, he reached for her, fingers grazing her cheek with feather-light tenderness. Despite the tumult outside, a calm settled within her as she leaned into his touch, a surge of warmth spreading through her. "Maybe we can change that," she replied, her gaze locked on his, charged with a mix of hope and vulnerability. The approach of a thunderclap drew their attention to the window, where rain streaked like teardrops running down glass, a mirrored reflection of their emotional tempest. Neither one could ignore the urgency drawing them together. As the storm continued to rage, Caden pulled Nova into his arms, the warmth of her body against his, igniting a fire in the depths of his chest. "One last chance," he whispered against her temple, securing her as if she could anchor him against the storm. "Together," she breathed, as their worlds converged once more, hearts thrumming in a rhythm as wild as the tempest outside. Scene 72, The Unraveling. The grand ballroom shimmered under an intricate chandelier, its crystals reflecting a million fractured lights across the polished marble floor. Guests mingled, laughter bubbling like champagne, oblivious to the undercurrents of tension that twisted through the air like a coiling serpent. The scent of rich spices from the lavish banquet filled the room, mingling intoxicatingly with the sweet floral notes from the centerpieces, lilies and peonies adorning gilded vases. Somewhere in the heavy air, an unspoken anxiety lingered, waiting for its moment to strike. Caden Onyx stood at the edge of the dance floor, his sharp eyes scanning the faces, muscles taut like a drawn bowstring. His heart raced, but it wasn't from the thrill of the gala. It was the weight of what lay ahead. The susurration of whispers surrounded him, threads of conspiratorial chatter that flitted like shadows in the dimly lit corners of the room. He spotted Nova across the room, her presence both enchanting and terrifying, the embodiment of wildflowers amidst concrete. She spoke animatedly to a guest, her laughter ringing like a taunt in his ears as he hardened his resolve. A tap on his shoulder broke his concentration. It was Elijah, Caden's childhood friend, his brow creased with urgency. "They're here," he urged, glancing toward the elegantly dressed crowd. "Who?" Caden bitterly replied, frustration gnawing at him. "The syndicate. You know they're not here to exchange pleasantries." Elijah's voice was low, barely a whisper above the gaiety around them. Caden clenched his fists at his sides, the warmth of anger igniting his senses. He couldn't afford to fail now, not when Nova was teetering on the precarious edge of his mess. Their secret, fragile like gossamer, could unravel any moment. "We need to find the intel." "If they recognize her," he trailed off, grim visions fluttering at the edges of his imagination. With a single nod, they plunged back into the throng, weaving through silks and satin, the laughter masking the undercurrents of danger. Suddenly, Caden spotted a figure slipping into the shadow's dark suit, a familiar swagger. Jonah, the snake in their Garden of Eden. He paused. "Wait," Caden hissed, pulling Elijah back. A voice rang out from the far end of the hall, sharp and clear through the clink of glasses. "I see you found my sister, Caden. Did you think you could keep her safe in a den of wolves?" Nova's twin, Clara, strode forth, a smirk twisting her lips, confidence irresistibly cruel. "Clara, this isn't the time." Caden began, but the warning came too late. "I know what you're hiding," Clara continued, her eyes dazzling and dangerous as she focused on Nova, who had just joined their side. "She might be able to charm the printers and the posh, but be careful, lovely. You might just end up in a bad fairy tale." "Caden, what's she talking about?" Nova interjected, confusion lacing her voice as she glanced between the two men and Clara. Tension thickened around them like fog on a cold morning. "Nothing that concerns you," Caden replied tersely, but the echo of fear was palpable in his voice. If only he could tear down the masks they wore and show her the truth. Nova took a step closer, a spark igniting in her gaze. "What do I need to know? Am I just a pawn in this game, or—" The unsteady vulnerability was stark. Caden could feel the shifting ground beneath their feet. "You're a queen in this chaos," Caden said, desperate to calm her storm. He reached for her hand, their fingers brushing with an electric pulse, a silent promise. "This is all part of a bigger picture." "Bigger picture?" She scoffed, and for a moment, Caden saw flickers of the fire that would ignite this room if they didn't find a way out soon. "Shattered glass isn't a picture, Caden. It's a mess." Jonah's laughter broke through, rich and mocking. "Ah, lovebirds ready to duel? Or will you let me decide your fates?" The words ignited Caden's fury. "Let them go," he shouted, tension bursting forth like an overripe fruit about to drop from the vine. As the words hung thick in the air, Caden and Jonah squared off, two men woven in a turbulent past, both entangled in a web of lies and loyalty. Clara watched with a smile, clearly relishing the chaos of it all. Elijah stepped in front of Caden, fists balled, ready to launch into physical battle. "We don't have to do this, Caden," he said, but the challenge was already out. "Stand down, Elijah. They've crossed the line." Caden growled, feeling a surge of protectiveness for Nova. "Protection isn't always a fight." Nova's voice cut through the tension, a voice that demanded respect, not just from Caden but from the ghosts of their past. In the eye of the storm, Caden felt everything crashing around him. He turned, drawing her close, enveloping her within the warmth of his embrace, and whispered fiercely, "Whatever happens now, we face it together. You are not a pawn, you are the game itself." In that moment, the world outside faded as their heartbeats synchronized, holding the fragile hope of champions in a chaotic arena. Scene 73, Against All Odds. The grand ballroom shimmered with twilight's remnants, an elegant waltz of chandeliers casting soft halos over the world of masks and deception below. As the revelers spun in splendor, Caden Onyx leaned against a marbled pillar, body coiled with tension. "Why are we standing here?" Nova Leclerc's fiery brandy eyes danced with resolve, the edges of her silk gown brushing against her legs with each movement. We need to confront them, Caden. It's the only way. Caden regarded her with an intensity that threatened to breach the carefully constructed walls around his heart. And what happens when they discover who you really are? His voice was a low rumble, intertwining concern and protectiveness. You think they will let us walk away unscathed? Her expression softened, revealing unspoken doubts hidden beneath the surface. You don't know that. We can handle this together. I trust you. He sighed, pushing away from the column, his gaze steady. Trust can be as fragile as glass, Nova. If it shatters, an echo of vulnerability crossed his features. I won't risk losing you over this. Not again. The gravity of their conversation began to settle, and the party sounds around them dimmed. The distant laughter, the clinking of glasses, it all faded into muffled chaos as the real stakes loomed between them. Nova searched his face, sensing the turmoil beneath his bravado. What do you fear more? She whispered, stepping closer. The syndicate finding out about your past, or my father's reaction when he discovers I've assumed my twin's identity? Waves of despair flashed in his eyes. What if? If. He paused, grappling with the weight of honesty. What if they find out about my son? Her breath caught in her throat at the uncharacteristic admission. You have a son. Caden pinched the bridge of his nose, frustration mingling with anguish. It's complicated, Nova. His mother and I, we were trapped in a web of choices that led to a dark path I never wanted. But her eyes sparkled with defiance. Then let me help you. Don't face this alone. They closed the distance, and he instinctively reached for her wrist, his touch sending sparks of electricity between them, a tether amid the chaos surrounding their lives. Heartbeats raced as she held his gaze, daring him to leap past his fear. Every unturned stone has a consequence. Let's uncover the truth together. Caden searched the depths of her soul, the strength radiating from her, sparking a flicker of determination within. All right, he finally said, allowing himself a moment of softness. Together. The door at the far end of the ballroom swung open, and the light from an adjacent chamber spilled into their private world, revealing the silhouettes of men in dark suits, the underbelly of the syndicate. Speak of the devil, Caden muttered, his spine straightening as an adrenaline rush coursed through him. Stay close, he warned, his composure returning, the protector in him flaring to life. The thrum of danger heightened their senses, weaving in and out as they approached the gathering. A glimmer caught his attention, a glint of silver reflecting a nearby chandelier. Obsidian, he murmured, recognizing the weapon of choice for his enemies. They're armed. Then we'll have to stay one step ahead. Nova's voice was laced with steely determination, yet her heart raced, harmonizing with the anxiety thickening the air. As the syndicate members socialized with practiced charm, Nova began weaving through the crowd, her own resolve blending into Caden's fierce loyalty. Their dual focus made them close in a way that banished the chaos of the world around them. Caden, she said sharply, prompting him to turn. If everything goes wrong, promise me one thing. Anything. Promise you'll run for our future. He stepped forward, grasping her shoulders, the intensity between them palpable. As long as we're together, there's no running, only fighting. Nova's laughter echoed like music in the dark, zestful and bright. Then let's show them just how strong we can be. Caden smirked, sensing a shift in the air. They were bound now, stronger together, facing a storm. Ready to fight against all odds, the weight of their shadows unshielded, but their bond forged anew. Together, he echoed, feeling the warmth of her resolve seep into him. As they moved deeper into the ball, the stakes were higher, and the promises of tomorrow hung tantalizingly at the edges of their hearts. Scene 74, a heart in conflict. The grand ballroom shimmered with ethereal light, crystal chandeliers hanging like suspended dreams from the high ceilings. Outside, a thunderstorm rumbled an ominous symphony, rain lashing against the tall windows and casting fleeting shadows that danced across the room. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sweetness of jasmine and lilac, the flowers artfully arranged in every corner, their fresh aroma battling against the palpable tension that filled the air. Caden Onyx stood at the expansive window, his reflection fractured by the raindrops, a man caught between loyalty and ambition, heart and duty. Every jagged bolt of lightning illuminated the haunted look in Caden's eyes, a tempest brewing within. He had come so close to revealing his secret to Nova LeClaire, the child he had hidden away like a shadow, the life he had never chosen, but lived nonetheless. Nova, vibrant and filled with a spirit that mirrored the storms outside, stood just a few feet away, her hands nervously fiddling with a silver bracelet. "Caden, you know I can help you," she said, her voice shimmering with sincerity, but layered beneath it was the familiar worry. Her green dress hugged her curves, elegant, enchanting, a stark contrast against the chaos beyond the glass. He turned, her plea reaching him as if it came from miles away. "It's not just about us anymore, Nova. There are things, people," he struggled to articulate, every word feeling like a weight pressing against his chest. "People, or just one person?" She questioned sharply, frustration leaking into her tone. "You keep standing there, locked in your thoughts. Don't you realize you're shutting me out?" Caden's heart raced, each word a crackle of electricity in the tension-filled air. He took a step closer to her, grounding their connection as the storm raged on outside. "It's not just the child, it's everything. My past, our future. If I let you in now." His voice trailed off, his gaze trembling against the weight of his fears.